James Whitfield had been mopping the same stretch of hallway at Maplewood Community Center for 11 years. And in all that time, he had learned one simple truth. The people everyone looked through were always the ones worth seeing most. He was a quiet man, broad-shouldered and gentle-eyed, with calloused hands that had learned to be tender, raising his 7-year-old son, Marcus, alone since his wife passed. Every Saturday morning, James came in early to clean the activity hall before the children's dance recital began, and every Saturday he stayed a little longer than his shift required, not because he was paid to, but because somewhere in the sound of those little feet on polished floors, he found a peace he couldn't name. That particular Saturday in April started no differently. He pushed his mop bucket through the double doors just as the young dance instructor, Miss Patrice, was arranging her students in a wide semicircle near the center of the floor. 12 children in pink. Leotards and tiny buns giggled and nudged each other while parents settled into the chairs along the wall. Phones already raised, eyes already bright. James moved quietly to the far corner, wringing his mop, keeping to the edges the way men in his position learned to do. That was when he noticed her, sitting in a wheelchair just beside the emergency exit, slightly apart from the group, was a little girl of about 8 years old named Lily. She wore the same pink leotard as the others, her dark curls pinned back with a sparkling barrette, but her legs were still in the way. Only legs touched by cerebral palsy can be still. She was watching the other children with eyes so full of longing that James felt it land somewhere in his chest, like a stone dropped in still water. Miss Patrice called the class to attention, and the music began, something bright and spinning and joyful, and every child moved forward except Lily, who stayed by the exit, hands folded in her lap, chin dropping just slightly, the way children do when they have already learned not to expect to be included. James set down his mop. He didn't think about it the way people think about grand gestures. He simply walked over, crouched down to her eye level, and said in his low, unhurried voice, "You want to dance with me?" Lily looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "I can't stand up," she said quietly. "Neither can I right now," he said. And he sat himself right down on the floor beside her wheelchair, crossing his legs, making himself small and equal. Then he began to move, swaying his arms in wide, sweeping arcs, bobbing his head to the beat, moving his shoulders in exaggerated, silly rhythm until Lily blinked, and then slowly, the corners of her mouth pulled upward. He took her small hand in his large one and moved it through the air like they were conducting an invisible orchestra. He spun it gently, dipped it theatrically, and Lily laughed, a real laugh, sudden and bright as a bell, and began moving her own arms in answer to the music. She rolled her wheelchair in a slow circle, and James shuffled on the floor beside her, utterly undignified and completely unconcerned about it, and the two of them danced together in their own private language, while the rest of the class twirled nearby. What James did not see, because he was too busy watching Lily's face come alive, was the woman standing near the back wall who had slipped in silently 10 minutes earlier. She was dressed simply, no jewelry, no designer logo visible. A tall woman with Lily's same dark curls, standing very still with her hand pressed flat against her sternum as though holding something in. Her name was Catherine Marsh, and she was worth approximately $4 billion. The founder of 3 healthcare technology companies, a woman whose schedule was managed by 2 full-time assistants, and who had not cried in a professional setting in over a decade. She was crying now, not loudly, just the kind of crying that happens when something you stopped believing in suddenly appears in front of you without warning. She had brought Lily to the Saturday class hoping, cautiously, that some small inclusion might happen. She had not expected a janitor with a mop bucket to sit down on a linoleum floor and make her daughter feel like the most important dancer in the room. When the song ended, Lily turned to James with shining eyes and said, "Same time next week?" James smiled the way only fathers who understand love without conditions can smile, and said, "I'll be here." Catherine stepped forward then, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a mother, and she said simply, "Thank you," and James nodded once, understanding everything that word was carrying. That day, nobody gave James an award. No camera crew appeared. No check arrived in the mail. A man who had learned that ordinary moments are the ones that change everything simply picked up his mop and finished his shift. and somewhere across the room, a little girl in a wheelchair was still swaying to music only she could hear. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, where every story reminds us that the most powerful thing a human being can do is simply choose to see someone,